Interesting. It wasn't the classic that I hoped, and it certainly didn't have. I predicted that it was going to be a lot of yellow flags, and there wasn't. It was a very clean race, and therefore very much a strategic race. Not for one for the purists, but not for the ones that love the excitement.
It's funny. I was just looking at the reaction on Twitter, and some of the real Formula One veterans and fans were saying, "Oh, this was amazing! I loved it," and then there were a lot of fans going, "Oh, wait, this was a parade. This was kind of boring." So yeah, it's you absolutely have different kinds of fans.
Yeah, no question about it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for a lot of reasons. I thought it was pretty funny. I love the fact that to a certain extent, Red Bull were messing with Mercedes towards the end, I think.
Well, Max Verstappen, we have I want to play this team radio if our producer has it. Because Max Verstappen, you put it out, Jonathan. Max goes on and on the radio and is talking about Lewis Hamilton complaining about something. Yeah.
Is Lewis complaining?
In
other words, they've got him down.
Yeah, they figured him out. But we'll try to get that team. Yeah, that's it. That's the clip. The producer's telling me in my ear. So we've got that. Let's hear it now.
Gap at 3.8. 3.8.
Is he complaining about something or what?
I think his tyres are done.
Is he complaining about something or what? Because, I mean, in other words, we've been saying all along, he always complains about his tyres. But, yeah, I think he was basically saying, I got this, and,
Yeah. Hey, Bob Varsha, what did you think of the race today?
I'm with Jonathan. I thought it was a fun race. I really enjoyed it. Taken aback a bit by the fact that in the race, I would have judged most likely to see a red flag. We didn't have one. Whereas in the 4 preceding Grand Prix on some of the widest open tracks we're going to see all year, there was red flags. So, one brief yellow flag, clean race. I think that's important. And, I understand there's still people who think that the top 5 finishers all finishing in the order they started somehow makes it a parade, even though those positions got swapped around during pit stops. I think the difference in this race was the crowd was so invested. There was so much at stake, so much pressure on Max Verstappen, so much pressure on Mercedes to try to answer the Dutch treat. And strategies going down and nobody knowing what the tires were going to do. And then we found out gradually as time went along, little twist in the tail where Valtteri Bottas went out on a fresh set of tires and was told, don't go for fast lap, leave that for Lewis. But he went ahead anyway and went purple in the first 2 sectors. They said, slow down, slow down, slow down, which he apparently did, but still took fast lap until Lewis came around on fresh tires and took it back. So, the race had a little of everything, and I loved it.
Valtteri, it's James. Please abort the fastest lap attempt before the end of the lap.
I think right after that's when we saw the one-finger salute down the straightaway by the perch.
From Bottas's.
But just commenting on that, have we seen a bit of a changing of the guard, though, with Red Bull putting on an exemplary performance of strategy and guile and speed compared to Mercedes, quite frankly, throughout the weekend? A bit lackluster, problems with the car with Hamilton. Just not as, and obviously the Bottas thing is he's not going to be there next year, and he wanted to set the fastest time, but they won all the points for Lewis. It's Lewis's team. I don't know. A little bit of acrimony, which doesn't exist in the new look Red Bull team. I know Perez would have been more of a factor had he not had to start from the pit lane, but it was a pretty darn good effort by Red Bull compared to how we're used to saying it about Mercedes.
Okay, but at what time?
Something up there.
Go, Bob.
We guessed because Max Verstappen had trouble his pole-winning lap. We guessed he had speed to burn, that he had everything in his pocket. Mercedes, kind of surprisingly, unable to match that pace. Earlier, maybe a week ago, there was a kerfuffle technicality when Red Bull suggested that Mercedes was doing something with the plenum, the part of the driveline where air comes in and gets mixed with fuel. Mercedes was thought to be supercooling that. There's a rule that the air in that plenum has to be at least 10 degrees warmer on average than the ambient on the racetrack. And it was suggested that Mercedes was using coolant to give it a cooler charge, which of course would make the air denser and the fuel air mixture would be denser. And that was helping Mercedes accelerate off the corners. Anytime you see suddenly Mercedes is having trouble accelerating with the Red Bull, you have to wonder, well, was there something to that? The investigations are going on. Red Bull has asked for clarity, and we'll see where all that leads. But, I just wanted to throw that out there for all the conspiracy theorists out there.
No, good. No, good point.
Black helicopters. Well, speaking of them,
There you go. Hey, it's Formula One.
I've just about decided that what we're hearing from Hamilton in the different ways he complains about his tires are actually messages about something else. Alien abductions is next. Yeah.
Well, I've always there's that. That's one theory, and the other is Bono is just so used to it's his little old lady kind of something. He's got to have. There's almost a way that Lewis kind of gets dramatic about the tires, and they just know that that's him. And they don't worry about, that's right, Lewis, that's right, great. And then he sets the fastest lap saying, I can't finish on these tires. It's all like, I'm starting to lean towards your theory, though, but it's either one of the two, I think.
Yeah.
We've been suggesting all along that when Lewis says one thing, believe the opposite, because that's the code he's using with the team.
Well, and I'm halfway in jest, but halfway not, that in the way he states it, or maybe even the specific phrase, that it might symbol, hey, how's my fuel? How's
an actual
whatever
true message.
Yeah, that there's a message hidden in it, which sounds nothing like the words he's saying.
But doesn't Red Bull's or Verstappen's comment about what's he complaining about? Because they beat him hands down today, and so the joke was him and Christian saying, what's he complaining about?
Yep, there you go.
Jonathan, you said a while ago about Red Bull having speed but you didn't mention strategy, which we're so used to Mercedes having every single box ticked.
Well,
but Red Bull did that today, every single box.
Yeah, and I said before the start of the race that strategy-wise, Mercedes were at an advantage because they could use the undercut or potential undercut to have one stop and a two stop, which they kind of went to. But I said, and Perez can't help Verstappen, which was all true, but between Christian, the team, and Verstappen, they outfoxed both Mercedes cars.
Yeah, I know, and we're like I said, we're just so used to Mercedes. It's nice to see someone else being able to do this.
And they did it to 4 world championships, so they know what they're doing. And they just needed, I said it a long time ago, they just needed that Honda to come good. Let's see Alonso on Honda now.
Yeah, it should be interesting. I just think this whole season's shaken up, and I'm excited. I mean, it's too early to look at 22, but I'm really hoping that shakes things up with all the things we see where different teams suddenly shine well, at least for a little while here in 21. I'm ready.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be a whole new year, that's for sure. 22, obviously, big rule changes for next year, if you don't know. And even Haas admitting that this year was kind of a write-off, and it has been, because they were basically saving themselves for 2022.
Yeah. Bob, do you have the final finishing order that you can run down for us?
I can give it a shot.
All right.
As I mentioned, the top 5 all finish in order. So you have Verstappen, Hamilton with fast lap bonus point, Bottas, then Pierre Gasly, who held on to that 4th place finish he started from, and Charles Leclerc in the first of the Ferraris. Carlos Sainz started 6th, but lost right at the end. He got passed by Fernando Alonso. So Sainz finished 7th, Alonso in 6th. Antonio Giovinazzi and Alpha just wasted that great 7th place qualified position, wound up 14th. Esteban Ocon, 9th, picking up more points for Alpine. Alonso, as I mentioned, 6th. George Russell started 10th, finished 11th. Daniel Ricciardo started 10th and finished 11th. George Russell started 11th, finished 17th. Lance Stroll finished where he started in 12th. Lando Norris picked up a few spots to finish 10th. Nicholas Latifi started from the pit lane, wound up 16th Yuki Tsunoda, they sensed an engine problem. They retired his car before the checkers. Sebastian Vettel had a miserable day, including that brief spin in the turn 3 that brought out the only yellow flag of the day. He wound up 13th. Robert Kubica went from 17th to 15th. Mick Schumacher finished where he started 18th. Nikita Mazepin apparently had a hydraulic issue. His car was retired. And Sergio Perez, who started from the pit lane, finished 8th.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. Excellent. And you're right. To me, what stands out is McLaren's woeful weekend all through. You know, Lando off it, having been right there. I mean, he's been vying for pole positions in the last few races. Ricciardo continues to struggle. I don't know why this track was just not a McLaren track. Andy Peel know the answer.
Hey, what happened to Ricciardo's car? It was blowing smoke at the beginning.
I think that was, you know, a little too much oil, because that's one of the things that we've noticed in some of the other races, some of the other cars, that they have that at the beginning until it essentially just kind of burns off a little bit in some manner, and then it fades away, because I didn't see the puffs late in the race.
Yeah, it was just...
Yeah, Jenson Button suggested that it was just overfill. And having said what I did this morning about the problems some teams were having with worries about whether the banked corners were creating G-forces that gave you oil scavenging problems, no surprise some of the teams decided to top it up a bit.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, that's an age-old problem. When you said that last, I was like, this is not 1970 in your small block Chevy with overfill, but it sounds like exactly what might have happened.
Golly.
One thing's for sure, this championship is alive and kicking, and it's going to kick all the way to Austin. That's my take from all of this, is that as we go into the second half of the season, we've got a real rivalry here, and you sort of, I feel like looking at the tracks ahead now, including Monza, and thinking, well, who's going to have the advantage there? How's this going to play out? You've got Bottas leaving the team. I don't think he's going to play nice forever. But you know, Perez is going to be a factor for sure. He had a bad weekend for lots of reasons, but Red Bull are in a position now to fully take it to Mercedes and take this championship.
Yeah, there's now Max Verstappen has 224.5 points and Hamilton 221.5. So Verstappen took the lead back and Bottas down at 123. But yeah, wouldn't when it comes to Austin here, it is going to be full on. I mean, it's going to be full on for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You know, I wait. I wonder how long until Mr. Bottas shows that he's a Johnny Paycheck fan. You know, the song "Take This Job and Shove It."
Yeah, I'm not buying that, I have to say. I mean, Bottas, you know, he may be annoyed if he gets kicked off the factory team, but he's still a Mercedes driver.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, unless he wants to go to a Ferrari or a Renault or a Honda powered car, which is not likely.
Yeah.
And the battle appears to be on between Bottas going to Williams or going to Alfa Romeo or De Vries with Toto.
All right, well, let's take a break. You're listening to Speed City F1 live on SiriusXM. Back after these messages. All right, welcome to the show, Gearheads. We watched the Formula One Dutch Grand Prix. Let me go out the phone number in case anybody wants to join us, 512-643-5483. And we actually have somebody waiting on the line right now that I want to talk to because Andy P. is the McLaren fan extraordinaire. So, Andy, we were wondering what the heck was the smoke in your man Ricciardo's car and why did it go away?
Well, okay. Well, first off, I thought I just got called out by Jonathan there earlier. So I figured I had to chime in.
You did?
Yeah, you do.
But the Daniel smoke has happened a couple of times. I think there was a race in Austria where, you know, that had happened as well, and it kind of clears up. So I wasn't super worried because the engineers, at least pre-race, weren't super worried about it. I mean, I know they broadcasted the Russell call, but it looked like whatever it was either corrected itself or they managed it enough so that it didn't hinder his race too bad.
Okay. As long as you weren't worried, Andy, that's all I was worried about.
Well, I was concerned. I mean, it's never good to see smoke coming out of a car, but the fact that the team wasn't reacting super bad or super panicky, told me that at least was manageable with nothing else.
But Andy, why such a woeful weekend given what they've done in the last few Grand Prix, where certainly Lando, I know Ricciardo's continued to struggle, but it just seemed like an off-wind for the whole team.
Well, I don't think this is a circuit that suits the characteristics of that car. The McLaren car this year has done really well in what I like to call like point and shoot tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Tracks with long straights, big DRS help, where they can take advantage kind of the Merc power unit. This was very twisty, very low speed corners, a lot like kind of Hungary. I had always kind of pegged these two tracks like, here's where Ferrari's going to probably come good. The fact that we didn't get a race last week in Belgium, I thought McLaren would have done really well, even without the wreck. But now we flip it, as far as I'm concerned. Now we go to Monza. I think Ferrari will struggle. I think McLaren will do well. And this third place is just going to go back and forth all the way to the end.
Yeah. Well, what did you, what did you think of the comments we were talking about, where some of the crowd was saying this is fantastic and other people are saying it was processional?
Well, the race itself, it was kind of more Spain-esque in terms of the strategy.
Mm.
There were different racing lines that were available, but I think this breed of car was a bit too wide. You saw some of the aero restrictions that you see, because you could catch, but it was really, really hard to overtake today. I want to see this track with the 2022 spec that they're working on, with the ground effect and the better aero, because I think this place could put on one heck of a show, because you've got all sorts of different lines, and you got to put the DRS in the bank corner at 14. You have to do that.
Good point.
Yep.
Yeah. And what about the banking in general? Obviously it's beautiful, and it gave us a couple of overtakes, like you mentioned, Les.
I liked it.
But yeah, what do you think, Andy?
Oh, I love the banking. I think I actually get a bit of NASCAR like Charlotte Roval-esque vibes out of here. Where like I said, if you could just fix some of the aero deficiencies, make it a little easier to overtake. The turn 3, that's an opportunity where you could see two distinct racing lines. Turn 14, you could see distinct racing lines. This track has a ton of potential going for it, and I actually really do like what they did to it to make it look fun.
Absolutely. When you're there in person, you really see that it's very roller coaster like, as many have said. And the beach environment, the dunes, that beachfront extends well past the track going inland. And so that's also something that's just really interesting and visually different than we're usually dealing with in that manner. I'd like to see more banking added, maybe in a couple other turns.
There you go.
Let's
For this, I think this is the first race in recent memory for me where I think the drag reduction system was less important in terms of getting overtakes than tire life and tire condition.
Like the old days.
Yeah, because tires, were
totally
such a question mark coming in. You know what you have with the DRS, but the tires were so critical to this race. And we saw it over and over again that a car with a tire advantage had a pretty easy time of making an overtake with or without DRS.
Yeah, and Jensen made a point, which was all 3 tires worked. Remember, Hamilton was on used mediums, and in the end, Verstappen was on hard, which is why I think they felt so comfortable at the end there, that it didn't matter what he was on. He was on rails.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is interesting, that it didn't even matter.
Well, you never go for the hard. The hard option is rarely used unless you're going for a one-stop or a long stint, and it didn't seem to matter today.
I saw a good tweet by Woodsy, as he goes by. Let me look that up, because he was talking about the fact that that they didn't have any tire data.
True.
All of this, I'm going to undercut, overcut. We didn't know what was going to happen, and I thought that was really good, where he was saying basically we don't have enough of this data. I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah. I don't know that they did. Did Pirelli do any serious tire testing at this track? I'm not sure.
I can't remember. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
Mm-hmm.
There was supposed to be a special spec of tire, and then they abandoned it. They were going to do it last year, and then they abandoned it for this year.
Of
so
course,
they went with their regular hard tires.
We missed a year, of course.
I still think they just need to pick 3 compounds for the entire season and roll with it.
For every track, you mean?
No, just these are the 3 for 22, and that's what they're going
for
to be
every
at
track.
and they will be
so
that
for
way
every
at every
track. You get the same 3 compounds.
Correct.
I would like that. I must admit.
I think that's an operational efficiency move, and and honestly, it's still going to maintain strategy. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because I don't see any value to.
Cost.
What's that, Andy?
I said it would certainly cut down on cost.
Yep.
Yeah, they're always looking to do that.
Yeah, I just don't think there's a benefit to having the whole color spectrum of tires.
Hey, Andy P., what do you think about Bottas? I saw one of your tweets about Bottas and Mercedes. What do you think?
If this isn't like confirmation that that's not going to keep going, I don't know what else is. I mean, they literally made him the sacrificial lamb today. And, I mean, he did his best to try to keep up with it. I thought the part at the end where he wasn't trying to set the fastest lap, but set the fastest lap was actually kind of funny. But, I mean, Lewis went out and kind of made that irrelevant anyway on the last lap. So, yeah, it's looking like fait accompli for Valtteri and Mercedes. The issue with him is what I always come back to. He never sent it. He never took a risk or was willing to not finish a race in order to win a race. And to be a world champion, you have to have that in you a little bit. You can clearly see Max and Lewis both have that in them, and that's why they're in this titanic fight.
I'll say this about I thought today the fact that the top 3 cars were the only cars on the lead lap at the end. I mean, they lapped all the way up to 4th place.
Yeah.
That
was crazy.
Bottas is clearly a huge asset in that car, and would look at what Perez is doing with arguably as quick a car as the Mercedes. He's struggling in qualifying. He's having to come from the back end races, whereas Bottas, hasn't had the best start to this year. In fact, it's been the worst year of his career with Mercedes thus far in 2021. And yet he is providing the kind of support for his championship contending teammate and a championship contending team that you want from a number 2 driver.
So are you basically saying that it's status quo then at Mercedes? They're going to keep Bottas?
Well, I don't know what's going on in Toto Wolff's head, but you could do a lot worse than Bottas in that car. Now, obviously, there's other considerations that come into it. Among them is the fact that Bottas wants to be a team leader. He wants to be a number 1. And if he's not willing to accept the number 2 role, I'm not sure George Russell is, but that's just another of the considerations you need to have. But I think what Bottas showed today, including taking that fast lap on fresh tires, showed that Mercedes could do a lot worse than him for next year. And he has Lewis's support. So
how about putting Russell in the McLaren instead of Ricciardo, who hasn't got to grips with it?
McLaren, put him in the Aston Martin.
Ooh.
Put him in a Mercedes car.
Yeah. So that would then leave George Russell at Williams then.
Could.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Was anybody surprised to see, knowing Red Bull's reputation, to see Perez sign the new contract for next year?
No. Actually,
surprised that he was asked to, or that he did it.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, really, that's the better question. He hasn't performed like you said. Really?
No, but it hasn't been a Ricciardo situation. I think he's had some bad luck, and I think Perez on his best day is as quick as anybody else in that car. So I think, what do you bring Albon back? Do you bring
Gasly?
one of the juniors? Gasly.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, Gasly would be the choice, but it's almost like they're going backwards. They've messed about with Kvyat and learnt from that one.
Gasly has been phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that was my whole point, is that he has been. So anyway, hey, Andy P., thanks, buddy. You've given us a lot of your time. We really appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, anytime. And here's hoping. Just a quick question.
Sure.
I know I saw F3 drop from COTA earlier.
Yep.
And I was just wondering, I just wanted to double check with you guys. You guys are on the inside of this. We're still all full go for Austin, right?
Oh yeah, baby.
Ask the mayor.
We had the mayor of Austin on. We've gotten. I mean, the new calendar's out, and in fact, we're going to talk about it. We're going to do a break. We're going to talk about it. But the COVID case, the chart is on the way down here in Austin. You can't go out in Austin without seeing masks anymore. I think everybody just wants the Formula One race. I think that's really reason why.
And MotoGP.
MotoGP, that's true.
Yeah, and Andy,
Well,
Andy, give you a status quo. Yes, F1 to come October 23rd and 4th, but not a second race. FIA F3 won't be coming, but we think the W Series will be coming, and F4 Americas will be coming, and there may be a chance of FR Americas because of that. Who knows?
And I tell you what, folks, if you don't already have your tickets, you better log in maybe even before the show's over. This thing is closing out, selling out like mad. And it's not easy right now. I've already heard folks not being able to get the tickets they usually get.
Or if you want to call 512-643-5483, maybe we'll give away a pair of tickets today.
Maybe we will.
You salty old dog.
Are you coming down, Andy?
Oh yeah, I'll be coming down for sure. I got a whole big contingent that's going to come down with me this year, so that's why I was a little nervous when I saw that F3 announcement. But I think you guys have calmed me down a little bit.
No, that F3 announcement. Yeah, don't worry about Austin. That F3 announcement, we tweeted about it yesterday. Let me see if I can find it because they were saying it was a cost and logistics.
Yeah, they're going to Sochi with F2 as well, so they'll probably literally load the F2 and F3 together, and I think that's probably the main reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks very much, guys, and you have a great rest of your Sunday.
All right, thanks,
Thank you,
Andy.
Andy.
And
Cheers. Happy Labor Day.
yeah, before we go to break, I want to talk about our sponsor. The Speed City F1 post-race show on SiriusXM is brought to you by CrowdStrike. Use the cloud to secure your team in the office, or anywhere with CrowdStrike at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. Well, let's get a break in, and when we come back, we'll continue that discussion. We'll talk a little bit more about Austin and lots more about Formula One. You listen to Speed City live from Austin. Back after these messages.
Hello, I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
All right, we were talking about these F3 drivers and now FIA F3, the big boy F3, how they're not coming to Austin, but there were 5 Americans. We talked about this in the pre-show, but there were 5 Americans, and Bob dug them up, but I'll read your text, Bob. It's Juan Manuel Correa, who, of course, we know who was up in Formula 2, had the big crash at Spa. But then there's Jack Crawford, Kalen Frederick, Logan Sargent, Hunter Yanni, who we've had on the show before,
Yep.
16-year-old kid. We have 5 Americans, guys. I mean,
Any one of those is capable.
We're stacking the deck. Come on, somebody get in
and then
there.
we had, of course, Kyle Kirkwood on the show, last week? So,
yep.
yeah, I mean, there's plenty
of Americans.
Americans.
And then bring the Fittipaldis in because they are American. And
Well, that's a good comment. What's it going to take for them to actually punch into the F1? It's got to have the points.
Well, Kirkwood put in a good point, which
Super
is
license.
he doesn't have the super license points, which is 1. And I told him to go to the Toyota Series, which is, again, going to be off. They're just going to the Grand Prix, so that's a shame. If you didn't know that, there is no Toyota Racing Series, so those points have gone for potentially people like Kirkwood and several others. But yeah, I think I agree with Kirkwood on this, is that you have to be a bit like Pietro and Enzo were, which is over in Europe racing.
have a Fittipaldi last name?
Yes, and that would help. But Logan Sargent is the most likely, I think, both from backing and from time in Europe and noticed by the sort of, the powers that be. That seems the obvious one. Plus, doesn't do any harm that he's from Boca Raton or from Florida.
Yeah.
And they're coming to Miami next year, so it would be nice, wouldn't it?
Oh, yeah. I think, as when we met with the mayor of the Miami Gardens community, said, you've got some names right here in the neighborhood to help promote this event. So stay tuned on some updates on the Miami GP.
Well, there's one update that came out this week. They have the official name for the circuit, and I'm waiting for the page to load, and I'll tell you.
It's the Miami Automobile Autodrome, right?
It's something,
International Autodrome.
It's something like that.
I think it's the Miami International Autodrome. Is what it is.
Yeah. So that came out this week. So but let's go back to something else. Andy P said he was worried. Is Austin going to happen? Is Austin going to happen? How many people have we had? Well, everybody we've talked to, like we said, the mayor, everybody at Circuit of the Americas. I mean, they're bugging us this week about what to do for our credentials, and we are full speed ahead here in Austin. And our producer has done something nice for me. He has dug up the chart. I will take some credit because about 3 weeks ago, when this curve we're looking at, if you're just listening, but we're looking at the 7-day moving average of COVID cases in Austin, Texas, not in Texas. Hospitalizations in Austin. And we're not talking about Texas. We're not talking about the United States. We're talking about Austin, Texas. And the curve started bending about 3 weeks ago. And we were talking about the 2 previous peaks that we had earlier in this year and then last year, and how the shape of them always looked the same. Well, once again, the shape looks identical, and it's moving down just as fast as it was moving up. And I thought about it again last night. I had to run over to the grocery store and get something, and every single person in the grocery store was wearing a mask. I mean, Austin is very, very cognizant of this, and just like before, Texas was raging with it. Austin was moving down. It's happening again. So I don't think we have any concern.
No, I brought up the point that I think we'll have a different kind of crowd this year, though, because obviously travel for fans worldwide is hard. We might see the Dutch guys going over there, but I don't expect to see 20,000 Dutchmen here supporting Verstappen simply because they're not going to be allowed. You know, you have to have special visas now. You have to be You can't just, run around the world at the moment in this current climate. Or there are certain countries are, letting people in, certain people aren't. They're red countries, as they call them. And so there's still a lot of situations where people can't travel as freely as they might have used to. So the crowd that we get
is one of those.
Yeah, and the US is definitely one of those.
New list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Austin actually has a very high vaccination rate, and so that's also playing in.
Yes,
and
that's the obvious one. Yes, you're absolutely right, Les. That we should bring that up because we do have a high vaccination rate. So,
but all the fans in those big grandstands are not going to be coming necessarily from Austin,
right?
Yeah,
elsewhere in Texas and elsewhere in the world where preventative measures are not being taken seriously, and that's a concern.
Yeah. And good point, Bob, because to that topic is because if you look at what Jonathan was saying, there's travel limited in, but we're all sold out. So could this be a very, very heavy American crowd this year versus prior years?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you guys this. Since you guys all live in Austin, do you know if COTA is planning any kind of checks at the door for vaccination and mask and whatever?
I don't know for sure, but I said yes because when we asked the mayor of Austin last week, he said, I asked him that question because ACL, the other, you may have heard of that, huge festival that's going to happen the same weekend as MotoGP, they announced that they were going to require either a proof of a vaccination or proof of a negative test within 72 hours of the first day, I guess, or maybe the day you come to the door. Because it's 2 weekends, but yes, the mayor suggested that. Now we haven't talked to COTA about that, but Bobby, when we talked to Bobby, we had Bobby on the show not too long ago.
Bobby Epstein,
Bobby Epstein, the CEO of COTA, and he was talking about, hey, look, we need to be safe. So I would imagine they're going to require one of those.
It's got to be, and there's 2 things I'd mention. Obviously, there's a Billy Joel concert as well, and that's going to be
21. What's the other concert, 21 somethings? That's for the kids. But anyway, it's the Friday night concert.
You open yourself up for that one, my friend. Pilots, I think.
21 over.
21 Pilots. There's not anybody on this show right now that
you opened it up. Yeah. But no, I mean, I think they will, and obviously from Bobby's point of view, they have to make sure that this event does go off well, because it could, it could be so detrimental to the future of events there. I think you made a very good point. October 3rd and 4th could well be a really interesting precursor to the Formula One event, because we've got MotoGP, very similar situation before Formula One gets hit.
It is. My concern also with that is, well, here's what I think that weekend's going to show us is how COTA is managing the situation operationally.
Yeah.
You know, I love watching to see how that plays out. So we'll watch how that happens. My concern is the influx of international folks may actually kind of spur another surge a couple of weeks later, which could tie into Formula One. But with all of the concerns and all of the appropriate precautions, I think that'll be minimized. We've seen them go into a bubble type of situation. So far we're expecting full credentials. So far we're expecting full credentials for the Speed City team, along with Mr. Andretti, Adam Andretti. But anyway, there's some possibility there. In some of the other races, MotoGP has reduced how many press and media are in the area, and so we could get impacted by that.
Yeah, very interesting indeed. I think MotoGP, I hope it does go off as well as we hope. But yeah, these are interesting times.
Yeah, there's also an interesting point that you guys know about the order from Greg Abbott, right? Where if you get state funding, there's certain requirements. So this,
well, he has said no mask mandates. He's mandated that, but people ignore him. So what you're saying that he might hold back the state funding?
Yeah. So
it's politics. Yep.
Yeah, that's a little scary, but yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that
I think
funding
it's worth
didn't happen. But that was
it's worth discussing. It's a very important thing, which is we ain't done with this by any means, and that's true of ACL. ACL, which by the way is the same weekend or over 2 weekends, but same weekend as MotoGP. Yeah. They have a mandate that you have to have proof of vaccination or a negative test within 72 hours. Which has been the way for a lot of live concerts. Will that be the way for Billy Joel? And if that's the way for Billy Joel, will it be surely the way for Formula One? And if that's the case, then it does come back to your Abbott funding potential.
Yeah. Like I was alluding to the fact that COTA missed out on that funding 1 year.
Yeah.
Actually due to
by not dotting the I's.
Yeah.
Administrative.
Yeah, they didn't file it. They gave the report, but they didn't file the paperwork on the right day or something.
Supporting paperwork. And I related that to, I had a discussion with somebody. I said, that's like when you get pulled over and you don't have proof of insurance, but you do have insurance that you could go to the window. That's a very good
analogy. Because
you could go to the window and go, look, I got it.
And you know what it was? It was the sex trafficking report that big
yeah.
events that get state funding have to issue. But
yeah.
Hey, let's get back to racing because we have a caller on the line. We got
21 pilots.
Well, it's one of them.
It's them going, who is that old guy
who
doesn't
mushed our band up?
Yeah, we got Mike from Tennessee. Mike, what's up, buddy?
Oh, just enjoying Formula One as you guys do. I wanted to maybe get someone to speak on the ideas. We seem to be leaning towards talking about particular drivers, but I want to know where Mercedes is on coming back after the Red Bull. What lies in that? I got to see the first lap and a half, and then I had to listen to the rest of it. And it seemed to me that Max just, from takeoff, left the Mercedes quite admirably. And it seemed to me that I'm trying to figure out where is Mercedes with coming back to Red Bull.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. Max was on the beach with his towel out by the fourth lap, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we touched on this a little bit, Mike, but the bottom line is that Red Bull is doing everything right now. Everything right. Yeah. Strategy, they've got
reliability.
Adrian Newey has a little to do with this. They've got a fantastic car. They got a fantastic engine with Honda. They're ticking all the boxes.
So it's not Hamilton just complaining.
Yeah.
No.
In the car too.
Go ahead, Bob.
You got a spectacular guy behind the wheel of the car, too.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yes.
But I would also add, and I harp on this just about every week, we're also under the new for 2021 Formula One spending cap.
Mm-hmm.
And as Jonathan's referred to, we've got an all new from the ground up race car coming next year that these teams have to design and build. So your resources have to be allocated between this year's championship and creating these new cars for next year. So how do you do that? I mean, Haas hasn't spent a buck on this year's car, and other teams are now joining them saying, okay, we're done. We've got to concentrate on next year. And Mercedes is among them. I don't know how Red Bull's getting it done, but they have a couple of teams to spread the expenses over. But it's tough. It's a huge managerial challenge, I think, to figure out your budgets for this year and the car that you're going to put on track next year.
Absolutely. I want to talk about next year. I want to talk about new engines coming soon, all of that, but we need to take a break. Let's get that break in now, and we'll continue our discussion after that. You're listening to Speed City Live from Austin, Texas, back after these messages.
Hello to everyone. This is Gunther Steiner. This is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
Has your workforce moved from the office to the home or to the garage, or maybe a rented cabin with open Wi-Fi? If your company has expanded outside the office and moved all your applications to the cloud, there's a whole new world of threats you'll have to worry about, including ransomware. CrowdStrike revolutionized security by harnessing the speed and power of the cloud to identify and stop the most advanced cyber attacks, even those that have never been seen before. So now you can work securely anywhere. Try CrowdStrike Falcon free today and protect your data and employees anywhere. Welcome to Anywhere. CrowdStrike, we stop breaches. Access the CrowdStrike Falcon platform free at crowdstrike.com/anywhere. CrowdStrike was the MVP of last weekend.
Last weekend show.
Race leader multiple times.
I tell you what, it's a pretty good bet. If you get the two Mercedes and the safety car, you've got a pretty good bet of getting on TV.
Yeah.
And driver of the day too. Yeah, that was awesome.
Bob, I don't know how much of that coverage you got to watch being not with us last week, but man, that CrowdStrike car, that beautiful red Mercedes GT CrowdStrike car, their logo was on the screen for hours. It was it was crazy.
I was busy with Fox coverage of the Extreme E Championship from Greenland, and we had periodic lengthy breaks because we were waiting for feeds to come down internationally. And so we would, lean over and what's going on the Formula race behind the safety car. Well, they were supposed to start 2 hours ago. Yeah, they're still behind the safety car. There was that kind of thing.
Race is still, yeah.
What are the boys doing on Speed City, trying to make sense of all of this? So yeah, we were kind of tuned into what was going on, but it was.
And how is the Extreme Championship?
It's wonderful. I thought about that listening to Jenson Button doing commentary today.
Yeah.
He, Lewis Hamilton, and Nico Rosberg all have teams in this series for all electric, 550 horsepower, off-road dune buggies, essentially. They call them SUVs, but they're like nothing out there in your driveway. Massive Continental tires on these things, and they race in environmentally challenged places around the world, the deserts, the oceans. And we were in Greenland for the first ever motorsports event of any kind in that massive and sparsely populated country. And we were on a river delta, essentially, where the mighty Russell Glacier is melting at a phenomenal rate. And that was the cause célèbre for the weekend. But it had a variety of surfaces. These cars are fast. The driver lineup is amazing. 9-time World Rally Champion Sebastian Loeb, 2-time World Champion Carlos Sainz Jr.'s dad. A male and a female driver in each car. And the thing I'm most impressed with are these women. Jamie Chadwick drives in the series. Katie, Molly Taylor, who was the only Australian overall national rally champion, who happens to be female. Jutta Kleinschmidt, who was the only one, the overall at the Paris-Dakar Rally when it was the Sirius Dakar Rally. So it's a great lineup. It's no holds barred. They just wall up these machines. And we had a great time. And thus far, Nico Rosberg's team has been leading. They won the first two races. Actually, Michael Andretti's team, which he co-owns with the folks at McLaren, Andretti United, not McLaren, Zach Brown, I should say. they won the last race. So it's a great championship. There's 2 more rounds to go, one in Sardinia and an event still to be announced. And I'm really enjoying it, except for the fact that it takes me away from Formula One coverage.
Well, hey, how do people watch it?
It's on Fox, usually on FS1 or FS2. We do a tape delay because the race days are very lengthy. They do multiple heats and a final and all that kind of stuff. So we cut it down to a palatable length. And usually our qualifying show airs on a Sunday morning, and the racing down to the final in the afternoon. But it changes weekend to weekend based on where we are in the world.
Yeah, I find
It's
it very
good fun.
I watched the first one. I loved it. Really interesting. And as you say, when you think about the names and the teams involved, it's pretty. I think both. It's a worthy cause for one, but it's a great new series. Not many new series can make it that way. We saw SRX recently on CBS, which was it worked. But we'll see. It's hard to get a new series off the ground.
Yes, it is. And that's one of the remarkable things about Extreme E, because the expenses are somewhat high. Chip Ganassi has a team in the series, I should say. The series travels by a low sulfur fueled converted freighter, great big ship, Helena. The paddock area looks like a military bivouac. It's all temporary. They bring everything in, they take everything out. It's a very advanced set of tents that house the teams and the television and the timing equipment, all the race cars and everything. It's really worth a look.
Settle down, Hawkeye.
Speaking of electric, no. Okay, good. The producer wasn't. Oh no, I think he's about to do it. No. Speaking of electric, Austin.
Yeah, it hurts right there.
Austin has become, you might have heard of this small company called Tesla. They've moved to Austin, and they're building the trucks here and others. But a whole bunch of companies have moved to Austin. It's become the electric vehicle capital of the world now. And at least that's what they're calling. But there's a bunch. There's a bunch that have gone. There's a big trucking company that went public. There's a motorcycle off-road company that's doing electric stuff here in Austin. And so Austin has become this electric vehicle mecca now for manufacturers. So that's going to be interesting. But I was thinking about when you said, as soon as you said Extreme E, I think electric, I was thinking about Formula E, about how that's not looking so good right now.
So
go ahead, Bob.
No, he was asking. He was because we were talking about this the other day, where how manufacturers leaving the sport or the series.
Well, Audi is leaving. They're moving on. Mercedes is going to be moving on. I mean, this is what manufacturers do. They come and they go. So it wouldn't be a surprise if we went away from a manufacturer-centered series, which Formula E has been from the beginning, and more toward a privateer series. But the manufacturer is always going to be around. And again, comes down to corporate budgets and marketing plans and what their goals are. Ironically, I think both Mercedes and Audi have pulled out of racing electric vehicles because they're devoting so many resources to building street vehicles powered by electricity. So
and in WEC as well with the hyper cars as well. So I think their focus is elsewhere, as you say.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
By the way, connected to that story, one of the bits, if you like, which does involve Formula E, is that Mercedes, Toto Wolff, feels somewhat burdened, if you like, to sort Nick de Vries out, who has won the world title in Formula E, another very good Dutch driver. And how good, I really don't know, but he's certainly in the junior formula, is deserving, and he's beaten a very strong field again in Formula E, and he's now looking to try to get into the Williams seat, and Toto wants that because he's a Mercedes driver just as Bottas is. So he's a factor in all of this sort of silly season talk.
Absolutely, he is. And I think he's probably the favorite for that Williams seat.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be interesting. It's an interesting thing to me, and we talked about this with regard to young drivers making their way up. Yeah, you have to be able to put up a lap time. You have to show that you can handle stiff competition on the tracks where Formula One races, and you do that through F3 and F2 and so on. But you also have to have that all-important relationship with the manufacturer, it seems to me. And that's why hearing, Alex Albon going from the traditional Honda relationship to a potential Ferrari relationship sounds so strange in my ear, because we're not used to seeing drivers, leave the nest, as it were, the manufacturer that they've been dealing with for so long. But there's very few seats out there, very few opportunities to make the move. So that kind of a manufacturer relationship is critical, and it's a very important decision if you decide you're going to switch for some reason. Unfortunately, Albon seems to be very much in demand. So, he may be able to punch his own ticket.
Yeah, seen at an IndyCar race recently. Another bit of connected story to that. Indy now is becoming a great breeding ground for those that can't find a crowded seat in F1. Callum Ilott, who is the young Brit coming up and was beaten by Schumacher in F2 last year. He is the current reserve driver for Ferrari and the test driver for Alfa Romeo, I believe. But he will be racing for Juncos Racing in Indy next weekend. So that's another F1. I also saw Marcus Armstrong, the Kiwi, who is another Ferrari junior, Nashville IndyCar race. So maybe Indy is getting a lot of talent, i.e. Rosenquist, Ericsson, et al., as it were, and Grosjean, obviously. I do think that they're just, the junior programs are great, but when there's nowhere to put them, it kind of creates a bit of an issue, because they're all kind of getting into a traffic jam when they get out of F2.
Yep. And I'll throw in a conspiracy theory here. You mentioned all the Ferrari connections between those young drivers that are turning up at IndyCar races. And we know that Roger Penske, who owns the IndyCar Series and Indianapolis Motor Speedway, has been dialing up Ferrari's phone number a bunch recently to try to get them to put their hat in the ring as a third engine manufacturer for IndyCar.
There you go. And then Liberty Media could easily have their third American Grand Prix.
Well, there you go.
Hey, Bob, you were...
Who else sit and watch the race today and thought, what would IndyCars look like around this track?
I actually did, yeah. It was a bit like Sonoma, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, you were out last week, but we talked about, speaking of Andretti and Formula One, and talking about Michael, talking about his interest in buying either Haas or Williams or somehow...
Alfa Romeo was one.
Yeah, Alfa Romeo. How exciting would that be?
Oh, and Michael told me, I got roped into doing one of those hospitality interviews that we're all familiar with at Grand Prix. And I found myself in the back club talking with Michael Andretti, having not prepared anything. So I just blurted out, Michael, I'm sure you're enjoying yourself this weekend. What are your thoughts about bringing the Andretti name back into Formula One? And he said this would have been 2001, 2002. He said, oh, absolutely. I've been watching Formula One a long time. I drove in it. I'd love to have a Formula One team. So he's harbored that dream, for about 15, 20 years now. And I'm sure he would jump at the chance if it made sense from a business perspective.
Doesn't do any harm that he has two Formula One drivers potentially in Alexander Rossi and Colton Herta.
Yeah.
There's talent there.
Hey, we brought that up to him, to his father, Mario, when he was here, when he was talking about we need an American team. This dates back to the opening of COTA. And said, what about you? Why not have an Andretti team? And he just kind of shook his head. I don't know if that is relative to his place in the world now, age, etc., or if there was some other indication. It's certainly a bigger budget than IndyCar has.
Yeah, the Andretti story hasn't kind of grown, has it? Sorry, Bob.
What was the question, the point?
Well, I was just about to say that Andretti story, since it broke, and I actually, because Adam Andretti was commentating with me, and he goes, oh, Michael's got something brewing, and then his story came out, and I was like, right, that's what it is. But I haven't heard anything since.
No, nor have I. But as I say, it's taken 20 years to get to this point for Michael. So, he's poised, but he's a smart businessman.
Yeah.
His brother John, who we all miss terribly, once told me he's never seen Michael happier since he got out of a race car and became a team owner, entrepreneur, business dealer. Michael just relishes that role. I think he'd love to expand his growing empire in any direction, and certainly the top form of motorsport in the world would be a place for them to go. I was also happy to see Mario tweeting during the Grand Prix, because this, of course, is the track where Mario had his famous
Oh, that's right.
with James Hunt back in '77, I think it was. They collided down there in the Tarzan corner, which looks just like it did today, and knocked Hunt out of the race. It was great to have Mario around to give us perspective and context in these kinds of situations when we get great old tracks back in the schedule.
Let's not forget in this whole topic about the AAC, the Andretti Acquisition Corporation, a new business entity formed by Michael Andretti, registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission with a goal of raising $250 million.
Which
dollarinis.
just happens to be the entry level to, or the entry
Formula
cost
One.
into Formula One.
Yeah, and you can even sponsor a radio show on the side.
Hey!
There you go.
Now you've got
Our
your
survey
thinking cap
said.
on. All right, we got to take a break. We got to get, speaking of sponsorship, let's get a break in, and we'll be back after these messages.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
Maybe Jay Leno could start an American Formula One team. He's got the bucks.
Well, nobody can say our name like Jay.
Well, that's because Jay was
It's
making
Jay.
fun of us.
No, he wasn't.
He was. I know. I
City.
watch him. Les knows. He was making fun of us because he'd never heard of us. This was back in like 2013.
Yeah, he was here with the
McLaren
team.
Hi, this is Jay Leno from JayLenosGarage.com, and you're listening to Speed City.
Yeah, we were out there. McLaren was here in town with one of their legacy cars, and they came out, sat there. Jay went out in some of the new street cars, was buzzing around. He said he was telling us about how good it feels going down the straightaway back there. Nice straightaway, stretch the legs of the McLaren, and you think you're flying, and then the F1
Well,
just
you
zips
know,
by him.
you know why they had him out there, right? Because he mentions, if you ever watch his Jay Leno's Garage on YouTube, he mentions the McLaren P1 that he owns,
Right.
or F1, excuse me, in every single
Feels like it.
No, and it's become a running joke that he's a part of now.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's obviously a massive fan.
Speed City.
Hey, Bob Varsha, you were talking during the break, and I hate for the world to miss your nuggets of wisdom. But you brought up something about Gary Anderson. He's great. He's a great follow on Twitter, but about what he said about the race today.
Oh, yeah. He basically said no red flags, no collisions, no virtual safety cars, no yellow flags. Of course, there was one very brief one, but who would have thunk it was basically what Gary Anderson was saying. And I agree completely.
Yeah.
I mean, we said that. You would have bet money that you were going to see some kind of race delay during the day. But, kudos to the entire field for that everybody behaved themselves. Everybody got their heads and their arms around the challenges that this track posed to a Formula One field, and they got the job done. I thought it was amazing.
I think FOM said to everybody, "Hey, look, last week we had a debacle. Let's have a nice, clean race." Hey, let me ask the producer if he has the clip of Jonathan's prediction.
Ouch.
I'm just joking. You won't have it. I'm just joking, Jonathan.
I agree with Bob. It is stunning because
Yeah, it is.
if you watch free practice and qualifying and everything else, you'd have said this is all the strategy is going to go out the window turn one, but it didn't.
I think that was, quite honestly, I think it's because that seemed so obvious that everybody went in there pretty gingerly and soft with attitude. And I think once they got through that and got through the first lap, which Max checked out, I mean, what was he, 1.7 ahead by the first lap?
Amazing.
In the first lap, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of set the enough of the stability or the environment for everybody that, hey, this is a wicked track you'll be off in no time. And I think that really kind of set it up, is that everybody went in apprehensive.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear if any of the drivers have comments about the physical toll it took on them. Some of George Russell, after qualifying, was worried because they'd only done 12 consecutive laps in any practice.
Yeah.
And now they were 72 in the race. I wonder if that contributed, maybe if some of the drivers were a little concerned about physical stamina. So maybe they took it easy, shall we say, and that contributed to the fact that only the top 3 cars were on the lead lap at the end of the race. Who knows? We'll have to wait to hear from them.
Yeah,
excellent point.
They definitely talked about that during the weekend on Friday and Saturday. But and speaking of that, I was thinking about Kubica when we talked about the physical toll.
Well, he ended in 15th place. Look at the names behind him.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I mean,
Latifi and Russell.
yeah,
And
Roussel.
Basically driving.
Latify.
I don't know why I like to call him
And
that.
Roussel. Yeah.
And Roussel. Yeah. Bob, you had mentioned something about the accusations against Mercedes.
Well, yeah, I was thinking back to the comment from our listener about what Mercedes can do to come to terms with the apparent advantage of the Red Bull, which made me think of that, supercooling of the air in the plenum that they were questioned about last week, to the point that Mark Hughes, the esteemed Formula One writer, actually explained the story in the Motorsport magazine. And then during qualifying on Saturday, we heard from Christian Horner on the Red Bull pit wall, because he had contacted Michael Massey, the race director, to point out that Mercedes was doing something unusual with the tire warmers on their car, those electrified blankets.
That's right.
That bring tires up to close to their operating temperature. I wasn't quite clear on what they were suggested they were doing, but I think he meant they were leaving them on the tires longer than allowed, hoping to keep the pressures up, because the hot air is going to make the pressure go up in the tire, so that they couldn't get caught having lower than specified tire pressures once the car took to the racetrack. That would allow the tire to deflate just that little bit, pressures down, more tread on the racetrack, which can lead to better lap times. But who knows? But those are the kinds of things in Formula One that you get. They will think of the most extraordinary ideas to try to find that last ounce of performance, and that may be what Mercedes was doing.
One of the things that you mentioned about the ambient air temperature in the earlier conversation coming into the plenum, to me, if it's not an active intercooler, for lack of a better term, cooling technology, that ambient air temperature, I think let's go for it. Let them figure out some way without using an air conditioning compressor, if you will, or an intercooler or whatever.
Which has been done in production cars.
If it's not an active technology, let's go for it, because that's something, my gosh, I was coming back from Hill Country yesterday with AC full blast, and I could just imagine having more power instead of
Well, that's because you read.
You always want more power, less. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Aye, Captain.
Scotty, you know that the Dodge Hellcat did that. They used the air conditioning system to put cold air into the engine instead of the passenger compartment.
Well, you know what?
Until the driver passed out.
Yeah, but if you're like Les, you don't care. You turn that vent around, put it in the engine, don't put it in the passenger.
Well, I'll tell you, in 1990, I ran a little turbo SVO 4-cylinder that put the air conditioning through the intercooler. It was a wet intercooler, and they put it through it, and were able to drop the ambient temperature down to I want to say it was around 28 degrees by the time it hit the combustion chamber.
Okay, in 1983,
wow,
I bought an alcohol injection system for a car that absolutely could not benefit from it. But I thought, I'm going to try to squeak out the last little bit. All it did was make it smell like a brewery as I was driving around.
Son, you've been drinking?
Well, in 1912, I had a Model T. No.
All right, we just have a couple minutes left in the show. What do we got that we want to? I had a couple of stories, but
will Ferrari bounce back next week, Bob?
No, they will try. They'll be, where they are. They're fighting McLaren for that third place in the Constructors' Championship, and I think that battle will go on. But Monza is such a unique race. I mean, the temple of speed, flat out, high revs all day, hard on the equipment, nerve-wracking for the drivers. I can't wait for it. It's going to be spectacular. Will Ferrari come through for the Tifosi? I just don't see it in the face of the display we saw from Red Bull and Mercedes today.
I think you're right.
I agree. I don't think this is their style of track this year.
Mm-hmm.
What else are you looking for next week, Jonathan?
Well, the reason I pose that question is that traditionally, and Bob knows this, Ferrari do kind of turn up the wick for Monza. It's one of the races where they always like to shine, want to shine, and want to give that to Tifosi what they can. But I just don't think they can offer it this year. I just really don't think they're there. And I agree. I think it's going to be Mercedes against Red Bull again, and I think McLaren will come into play as well.
All right, well, gentlemen, let me give out some information. As you know, if you're listening now, we do our show every Sunday in the morning for Formula One. We do the pre-show and the post-race show, but we also have our post-race show gets replayed on local radio in Austin on Sunday nights, but we also occasionally will throw in a thing or two new there. But we also, on non-F1 weekends, we do a regular show every Sunday night in Austin, and talking not only about Formula One, a little bit like what we did today, but a little bit about everything. So every Sunday night at 7 o'clock Central Time in Austin. And if you want to find out more, go to speedcitybroadcast.com. Follow us on social media, lots of stuff during the week. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
And if you've got questions, send them to us.
Yeah, send them to us through the website, through social media, whatever you want. Talk to you next Sunday.
Ciao, y'all.
Happy trails.
Cheers.